A deeply held belief is typically something you've held onto for a very long time, such that it begins to form part of your identity. If you then have an experience that makes you realize that belief is in fact wrong, you don't know who you are anymore. I'm sure you've had a moment when what you thought was true actually wasn't, and then you were forced to pick up the pieces and decide what to do next. Well, for me this week at least, it was the deeply held belief that mobile games were lame. I'd never bothered to play them. I judged them from afar and I was quite content in my position. But then I played Gwent, and all hell broke loose. Maybe you're like pre-Gwent Mike and you think mobile games are for children. Well, then you'll enjoy the first part as I explain what I don't like about mobile games in general. But maybe you're more like post-Gwent Mike and you think they have a rightful place amongst their bigger brothers and sisters. Well, there's something for you here too. So I'll be covering the game of Gwent and how it changed my view on an entire platform forever. The single biggest issue facing mobile games when compared directly with other platforms is the complete lack of physical controls available to the player. I have never understood people playing PUBG, Fortnite, or any other fast-paced action game on their phones when they have to mash their grubby fingers all over the very screen they're trying to look at. Just imagine Xbox or PlayStation announcing a feature where you had to put your hands all over your TV to play a game. It would become the meme of a century. This is by far the biggest deal breaker that has kept me away from playing mobile games. And for those of you who want to tell me about an adapter available to connect to your phone so you can play with a controller, well, now we're just talking about a console. I mean, either it's a mobile, which means no controllers, or it's a console. I'm not walking around town with a controller stuffed in my pocket. Now, when I play a game, I'm wanting to explore something new and different, be it an idea, a location, a theme, a character, maybe a meaningful story, but I also want interesting mechanics tying these in, and typically a layered experience of these different elements to keep it from becoming stale. Again, looking from afar, I found mobile games to be a shallow imitation of this. A game only features one or maybe two of these things. If it has a theme, then it's not going to have much of an interesting idea or compelling mechanics. It makes sense because the mobile gamer category is made up of predominantly casual gamers, and so you really want something short, sharp, and shiny as a developer. But for me, that adds up to something that is too often less than the sum of its parts. The primary example being when they make a mobile version of a full released game, which becomes a reduced version of the original to try and target a wider audience. But it seems all of the efforts of game design and development went into the original, and now they're just condensing, reformatting, and cutting and chopping so that the title fits into a mobile package, regardless of what's left inside. I don't have credible evidence to back this up, this is just my perception speaking, but to me it seemed as though the first industry-wide application of gambling techniques to make money from players was across the mobile gaming platform. I'm referring to free-to-play techniques where you hook the player in, then after a few attempts lock them out for 24 hours to make them pay to play. Also paying for progression and loot boxes or anything of that nature. Personally, I don't enter into any sort of pay-to-play technique a game might offer other than the oldest one in the book by simply purchasing the game. So these methods don't affect me directly, or at least my bank account, but I also don't like them either. Applied correctly, and I think they still leave a bad smell on a game. Applied incorrectly and they ruin the experience for almost everyone. It's not to say mobile games are the only ones to be doing this, absolutely not anymore. but they seem to give the beast legs. I respect that it's a method of selling IP, I just choose to think it sucks.
The worst. She's the worst.
So these are the major reasons why I've not bothered to look at mobile games in any meaningful way. Basically, up until now, the only justifiable reason I could imagine that you would play mobile games would be because you had no other platform available to you. I know you're thinking that's the purpose of them, but that's not what I said. I mean, if you had access to a PC or a console, then you would just wait until you were back home to play them. And if you were out and about and needed to kill some time, you'd read a book, listen to a podcast, or, heaven forbid, engage in conversation with someone. So this was my position. Now we can shatter that deeply held belief. I just need to say I think it's hilarious that I'm showing B-roll of a card game, but then again, why not? Okay, so Gwent. My first experience with Gwent was playing through my biggest game in the last 5 years, The Witcher 3. I've played it on 2 platforms and it is as good as they say.
Impressive. Very nice.
Gwent is in fact a fully playable game inside the game of The Witcher 3. As you ride around and meet all the different individuals the world has to offer, you always have the option to sit down with them and play a game of Gwent. In-game, it has a meta feeling to it because each significant game character can be found as a playing card of the Gwent game. So you can be Geralt of Rivia playing against the Bloody Baron and play your Geralt of Rivia card to win the game.
Are you familiar with Gwent?
No, and I don't have time to learn.
But the rules are quite simple. Come, let's play.
Why not?
Splendid! Here's how it's done.
So, a quick Gwent 101. It's a deck building card game, meaning when you're not playing Gwent, you can find Gwent cards and add them to your collection, which you then select into a playable deck that you randomly draw upon during matchups. Once you're playing, it's a bit like chess, but with cards, in that you've got 2 opposing armies full of pieces with wildly different abilities. But the depth in the complexity of pieces is much greater here. In this way, Gwent is to chess what chess is to checkers.
The chess, it ain't checkers.
Then it's a matter of trying to outsmart your opponent and counter their counters as you lay down card after card. The game lasts between 10 and 20 minutes, playing best of 3 rounds. The standalone Gwent card game was released much after the in-game version, and for better or worse, it has slowly developed over time to become something much deeper and more involved. And now, rather than play in-game characters, you're playing other people. And to be fair to my overall argument, this is not a mobile exclusive title, meaning you can play it on your PC, but you can pick it up where you left off on your iPad the following day, which is something I particularly enjoy being able to do. You can play it on a bigger screen, but the experience is just as good on the iPad, and that way you can sit on the couch in front of the fire as you try to strategize against Hitman 4587 and his Nilfgaardians. So this crosses my first point off the list. The game is slow-paced enough that the touchscreen interface is entirely adequate and doesn't detract from the experience at all. This is a mental game, so there's plenty of time when your mitts are off the screen and you're just weighing up your options and considering your next possible move. My second complaint is no longer valid here either. This game is oozing with depth. Even after your first 10 hours, you feel like you're barely scratching the surface. The game does a good job, though, of sheltering you from what players can eventually become, by matching you up with people with near identical experience as you.
First time? Yeah, you?
No, not my first time.
Playable cards number close to 1,000, so every time you face up against someone, you're going to see something you haven't seen before. And because it's a deck building card game, there's an endless cycle outside the matchups where you can be collecting cards and trying to put together the most competitive deck. It also helps that the game has the ability to lean into the theme and lore of its surrounding universe. The Witcher games, the books and the TV series, it's all helping to validate the card game you're playing. I'd say I'm neutral when it comes to the lore and vibe of The Witcher. I don't fanboy love it, but it's definitely got enough spice and flavour to keep it from being mundane or uninspired. The only detrimental part of this game, in my view, is the gamification mentioned previously. Gwent is full of opportunities to improve your prospects by simply purchasing this component or that element. I particularly don't enjoy the loot boxes, or kegs as they're called here, where you are rewarded with 5 random cards, 4 of which you probably already have. The flip side to this is the loot box probably finds its origins in deck building card games, even pre-video games. Gwent isn't doing anything sinister here, it's a tried and true method of randomly generating cards for people to add to their collection, but they're definitely not improving upon it either. In summary, I've been genuinely shocked by the fact that I've enjoyed a game on a mobile device. It was done by the developers producing something with enormous depth and potential for growth, whilst playing to the strengths of the device rather than simply trying to band-aid a solution. Gwent is an excellent title, not without its shortcomings, that will satisfy the deep thinker, strategist and collector in you. I suppose in a way I was always going to end up here as mobile games edge closer towards their other platform counterparts. I just didn't think it would be with a deck building card game spawned from the world of another game. But then again, 2020, am I right? I genuinely get a kick out of hearing people's thoughts, so if you have one, please leave a comment or find me on Twitter for a chat. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of my next release. To my very select group of subscribers, you are the true champions, and I have Christmas cards ready and waiting for each of you. It's been my absolute pleasure to talk about virtual card games. You've been fantastic for making it all the way. Be good to your friends and family. Ciao.